Hello and welcome. This is kind of an end of the year. I'm not really. I guess I can't really say review, but last video of 2018, kind of thoughts of what we're going to be looking forward to in 2019. So, with that said, blah 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 blah. With that said, um, let's go ahead and go forward. 2018, we did a lot of reviews of history, and I did the entirety of the United States. So, um, we have that as far as the flags go. I'm currently working on uh, a background of all the countries. I've already posted Afghanistan, and I'm working on Albania next. But essentially, it goes over a little bit of history, the makeup of who lives in the country, what's spoken, um, industries, and since I did one on all these flags of the U.S. states, I figured I would add the flags and the things about the country as well. I'll talk about I've talked about the big cities in each one, so I've got Albania in the works since I've already done Afghanistan. Um, Upper lip stitching. Now, um, hopefully I can have more information on like the lives of interesting people throughout history. I did one on the history of Woody Guthrie, although it kind of killed me because for some reason I got into another lull and just couldn't put everything together. Honestly, I need a better working space because as it sits, I'm kind of cramped into my room with no real way to write and stuff. So I've got my books just stacked up in little stacks. Because when I lived alone, I had a bit of a small library, to be honest. Now that I'm back to living with my parents, um, in my room, it is like everything clumped on you. So, but yeah, um, we'll talk more about historical people throughout history. I want to do some uh, historic movie reviews and musical reviews. I did it was kind of a half-hearted attempt at it, but I did a musical review of This Is America by Childish Gambino. I'd like to redo that and give it some better historical context. There's a lot of videos I'd already like to redo, even though I only have maybe barely a year under my belt. But I'd also like to do songs like Strange Fruit um, and This Land Is Your Land. There's a lot more to that song than what we know, because it actually spoke about the good and the bad of America. It wasn't just from California to the New York Islands and the Purple Lands. It also talked about the bread lines and, people living in poverty. But for better or worse, this land is your land, this land is my land. So there's a lot that could be put into context, and movies as well. Um, Mississippi Burning. That's a great movie to go over. Um, or maybe 300, which itself is based on a comic series, which is loosely based on a stand by several Greeks, but the main force led by the 300 Spartans. Um, because it was actually several Greek city states. It wasn't just 300 people. But it's that kind of historical stuff that can be talked about. Um, but a lot of historical reviews of music and movies, and let's see. Um, I've been doing a lot of videos on Fallout 76, and I want to do some more on a bit of the history, science, and lore of some of it. Mainly, I've been kind of just reviewing, and I have been trying to give it some credit, because while it has fallen horribly in some regards, there is some need to defend some of it, because not all of it is bad. But anyway, I go over that in my previous videos. But I'd like to do some lore on that, uh, and the other Fallout games. I know I did an earlier video on the opening to the original Fallout, which I'd like to redo, because for some reason the footage was that tiny. But I'd like to re-record it and put it up, use it in a video. Right now I've got so much gameplay saved on the hard drive, I need to make a few videos so I can erase some room. Because it's only a terabyte hard drive, and I've already used several hundred gigabytes, so I need to either get my hands on a few other external hard drives to add to it, or just, yeah, I need to go through there and put some of it up online. I would like to do some um, videos on stuff, other games I enjoy as well. But that will be a little more difficult because I do enjoy Nintendo, like The Legend of Zelda, um, Metroid, Mario. Um, and I do enjoy Monster Hunter. I've been a big Monster Hunter fan since Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. I got that and played it with friends, and I've been kind of hooked on the series since. Got World a while back, but I've been so busy playing the 76, haven't played it too much yet. Um, I think I love the Fallout series because there is so much you can pull from it and compare with actual world history because it's essentially our history that diverges from the time stream. So, it's what is it? Back to the Future 2 where he goes into the future. This is 1985, and at this point in the time stream. So, yeah, it's essentially what the Fallout series kind of feels like in a nutshell. So, 1.21 gigawatts. Kind of hurt. Um, Great. Okay, yeah, that's enough of that. Let's see what else. I've thought about doing a separate channel for gameplay. I haven't made up my mind on that. I guess I honestly need to work on building this one first and getting it filled up so I can on a more regular schedule for this before I even consider a gameplay channel. But it's just where I'm such a big fan of games. You know, I was started in the age of Atari and Nintendo. I played, what was it, the 2600, which was the joystick and the button, I think. I can't remember. But essentially, I remember games like Asteroids, Space Invaders, stuff like that. I remember. I think there was a game called Double Dribble too. I'm not sure if it was Atari or another system, but it was basically Lakers Celtics was the only teams you had because one was a purple man and one was a green man. So it was like, but it's like you basically moved your man up and down the court with the ball and you'd shoot. I want to say it was Atari. I may be wrong on that. I'll have to look that up. But I think I remember playing that. I remember playing games like Cubert. Um, I remember the days of the arcades, your Cuberts, your Pac-Mans, um, the X-Men arcade, when I was younger, and we would go to the local Pizza Hut. They always had one of these little tabletop arcades of the SNK fighting games. What was it with the Terry Bogard and stuff? So I remember that. Um, but anyways, um, later on I would play Nintendo, uh, and I played a lot of the consoles since then. Uh, I owned a Nintendo, a Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube. The Nintendo Wii was, as a matter of fact, was the first Nintendo system I didn't own. It's the only one besides the Switch to this point that I've never owned. I bought the Wii U. I haven't had a chance to buy the Switch yet, so. Um, what else? I remember owning the Fat Boy PS1, the big fat one, so the originals. I still had it up until a few years ago. It finally fell apart. Literally just fell apart. Um, what else? I owned a PS2 very briefly. It was late in the PS2's life cycle. Eh, I just didn't play it. I only bought two games for it, and it's just eh. So yeah, the PS2 don't hold a lot of memories for me just because didn't play it. Um, bought a PS3, still own it to this day. One of the Fat Boy PS3s. In fact, it can play PS1 games, so I still have some of my PlayStation 1 games I can still play on the PlayStation 3. And I have a PlayStation 4, although a year into its cycle, the damn HDMI card decided, hey, I'm going to die on you. I've now figured out how to use it again, record it and stuff. I didn't have to replace the card. I basically set it into a three-way HDMI port switch and then hooked it up. So now I can see it and everything. But yeah, and Xbox. I bought the original Xbox. In fact, I still own it. The original Fat Boy Xbox. Owned a 360 for a while, but I sold it so I could buy the PlayStation 4. Um, Never owned an Xbox One. Don't own one, so only one of the current console generations I have is the PS4. So, um, I played the Sega Genesis, the Sega Saturn, and the Sega Dreamcast. Never owned any of them, but I played them. As far as anything else, nah. Where was I going with this whole rant? Oh yeah, there's a lot in gaming I like to do, but due to copyright concerns, Bethesda's a bit friendly with it, so I don't have to worry as much. Um, Despite this, don't get me wrong. I adore Nintendo and Capcom. They have some of my favorite games that connect me to my youth. Um, like I said, Nintendo's got so many first party games: Mario, Legend of Zelda, Metroid. Um, just Legend of Zelda series. That's my game. I played the original first two when they first come out, but wasn't really hooked on them. I was like, yeah, it's all right, I guess. But on the Super Nintendo, when Link to the Past came out, I was hooked in. That became my series. That very much became my series. I adored that. Um, so yeah, I adore Nintendo. Capcom, I love. I mean, you're talking Monster Hunter, Mega Man X. These are games I played a lot in my youth. I, well, Mega Man I played a lot. Monster Hunter, like I said, I just got a few years back when 3 Ultimate came out, so and really got into the series. Playing 3 Ultimate, 4 Ultimate, Freedom Unite. What else? I played Generations, and like I said, I bought World. Um, I'd like to get my hands on a Switch so I can play Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. Just because there's so many monsters on it. It kind of saddens me a bit to see that there is such a change in the game, but I understand some of it is for the better. But it's just the formula has been so good for so long, and it's like, so yeah, I adore it. So still, it's a great series, Capcom. I have to give you props for it. But yeah, like I said, there's a lot of series I'd like to play. Um, when I was younger, I played a lot of sports. As far as video games, I love playing the Madden games, the NBA lives, um, all that. I would get the college football games and basically spend a good week or two just naming players, their actual names, finding them in the books. Da, 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 da. This weight, this height, all right, this matches this, the number, da, 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 this is player. Da, da, I was that invested in the sports games. I enjoyed it that much. I used to be someone who could give you a great breakdown of sports, especially football, and give you a good overview of everything. I haven't watched hardly any at all in years, though, because when I moved to Tennessee, of my roommates, I was just really the only one that was a big sports fan. So I didn't get to watch sports as much as I used to. and I've since kind of fallen off, haven't watched in years. I still loosely keep up with it if you've ever watched any of my live broadcasts. So I still loosely keep up with some sports. But yeah, I used to be heavily into it, so I don't have the memories of playing, the Final Fantasies and all that that other people do. It was sports games I played a lot of. So I've seen the evolution over the years. I've seen the evolution quite a bit. I don't play them anymore because, like I said, I just no longer keep up with sports or anything. But there are still games I remember playing in my youth, like Legend of Zelda and Mega Man. I remember playing the original Contra. Me and my cousin would always rent Contra when you still rented video games, and um, we would take it back and put in the famous code up, up, down, down, left, right, B, A, start. It gave you all those lives, and we ended up beating the game together a few times. So yeah, I mean, Contra's one of the earliest games I remember beating. Um, let's see. What else? But anyway, my point that I keep rambling on and forgetting. If you ever watch my videos, you know I have a tendency to do that. I'll ramble, but point. There's a lot of games I did play that I would love to discuss, especially in the historical context and maybe even scientific context, or just discuss the games. I'd love to just talk about the monsters in Monster Hunter. If I could do that, that would be wonderful. But again, many of the Japanese companies, Capcom and Nintendo, are very cautious with their materials use, which I understand. I understand. I still love them. Still love you guys. Still awesome. Still a big part of my past. So, um, what else can we talk about here? Um, but yeah, I hope to deliver more educational material. Oh, like I said, I have a video series on the countries, and I hope to do one on the flags of the Canadian provinces, which I think there's like about 8 or 9 or something like that. Saskatchewan and British Columbia. I don't think is Saskatchewan one. Well, Ottawa, British Columbia, blah blah blah. The provinces, not the cities. I'm trying to remember some of these names because when I used to watch wrestling as a kid, I was big into wrestling growing up. Your Canadian wrestlers would always be like from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So yeah, Alberta is one. I'm like, why are there three places? Why isn't it just like Atlanta, US or Atlanta, Georgia? So I was always kind of confused by that as a young viewer. Which I'm gonna talk about wrestling a little bit. Um, because I grew up I still remember when WCW was NWA. Um, I remember the AWA. I remember Glow, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, when it was on the air. Um, what else? Yeah, I remember a lot of this uh, before it became just WWF and others. It used to be so many um, organizations out there. Wrestling was a huge part of America, and now, there was always regional wrestling on TV. And you had big organizations like the AWA, the American Wrestling Alliance, and you had the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, and of course there was the WWF, now the WWE, not the World Wildlife Fund, but the World Wrestling Federation. Um, but yeah, and unfortunately, when the now WWE and the NWA that became WCW got so big, it kind of squashed everything else off television as far as wrestling. And while that may be considered wrestling's heyday, it kind of shrunk it down. Because wrestling used to be so much more. But yeah, I may talk about wrestling. I don't know. Mainly, I will talk about educational. Um, like I said, I've got the one on the countries. I want to do one on politicians and who they are owned by. As anybody who is familiar with American politics knows, the rich and the corporations own American politicians, except for maybe a very, very, very few, which is why I'm a big fan of the progressive movement. Your Bernie Sanders, uh, Ocasio Cortez's, the people that aren't bought out by the rich, by the corporations. You've already got the Washington Post, the little page boy of corporate Democrats trying to attack Bernie Sanders. Already. He hasn't announced he's running for 2020, but they're already attacking him. I don't like to get too deep into politics because it's such a touchy subject. I don't want this to be about education and entertainment, but sometimes, yeah, you need to get a little political. I probably shouldn't touch it that much, though. But yeah, honestly, both parties are sellouts. Um, Republicans sell out, corporate Democrats sell out, and there's like a thin, thin, thin sliver of politicians who are actually for the people. So that's what kills me. Our country so sold out to the rich and to the corporations. So, like I said, I wouldn't mind doing a little series on who's owned by what corporations or big donors. That's why I think dark money shouldn't exist. You know, the current Supreme Court is getting more greedy and corporate friendly, and it's just we honestly we're living in the second Gilded Age, which is like, oh, that may sound good, but honestly, all it meant is in the original Gilded Age, the people were kind of screwed over, and it was owned by where the politicians were owned by the rich and the corporations, and they ran everything. It's really like the Gilded Age right now. That's how it feels. Because you have no responsibility by media. Corporations and the rich own the politicians. We really need a new FDR to come along, a new Teddy Roosevelt and his successor, William Howard Taft, to smack some monopolies around and break them up. So, and in case you think I'm being partisan, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, was Democrat. Teddy Roosevelt and William Howard Taft were Republican. But what's weird is in those days, starting at the beginning of the 1900s until about the 1980s, you see a slow switchover of the parties to what we have now. Anyway, getting off topic. Um, let's see. But what else? But yeah, a lot of educational material. I'll try to put up a lot of historical context and content in its reviews with movies and music. A lot of um, educational material as far as um, historical stuff. And I know I released a video on the history of Christmas, although it was a bit rushed. I just kind of slapped that together. So honestly, it probably needs to be redone. 2018 was a year of starting out, so I look at that. It's a way to start. There's a lot of the videos. If I had my ability, I would. If I had my wish, I would do over. But right now, we'll proceed with things because I am getting better at editing. Blah, 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 blah. Although I'm more willing to leave in mistakes than a lot of YouTubers, because honestly, I'm human. So, and everybody else should realize we're human. We're not, you know, magical creatures that do everything right the first time. So yes, I will leave in when I have speaking mistakes, when all that. Because honestly, I feel it's just part of who I am now. So, um, but I am getting better at editing, um, and hopefully it'll improve in 2019 as the year goes along. Um, but yeah, just kind of wanted to speak to y'all, let you know, kind of a look back and a look forward. So, since it is the end of this year, 2018. Oh, and yeah, the educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. It's important. And it's still going to remain a huge part of this channel. I really feel that education is so needed in this country because it feels as if the educational um, level has dropped. Perhaps it's just myself, but yeah, it does feel as though the educational levels drop because you have more people willing to believe in foolish ideas, uh, those that go against science, which is not a religious theory, it's testing and fact. It has a built in way to make sure of itself. A theory is put up there. You test it. You set it out. You say, this is my theory on whatever. Um, you know, from what I've observed, from what I've tested, it is a solid, clear theory. And then it becomes scientific theory. At that point, it is still tested. It is tested by others and others. But you have to be able to refute it, to say it is wrong, which was what bothers me about evolution. People were like, but God wrote the Bible when he says this. I don't mind you being religious. Believe in your religious texts. I own a copy of the Bible, the Quran, the Book of Mormon, um, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the teachings of Buddha. You know, I like to study religious texts, which is something I might make another video on, but don't try to say your religious book is proof. Have you tested your religious book? I mean, until you can provide clear and factual testing of your religious book, don't try to use it as proof. We want actual thought, education. So yes, freaking educate thyself. Um, but anyway, I do appreciate that. Appreciate you guys. I love you. I hope you continue watching throughout the year. But anyway, Happy New Year since it is just around the corner. And I'll see y'all later. Bye.